Kim Rossi from the Pathstone Foundation is here today to remind us about the importance of mental health as we approach the holiday season. First, Kim, before we get started, I haven't had a chance to congratulate you in person. Women in Business Award recently. How did you feel?
You know, it was a really great honor, and it was nice to have a table of people from Pathstone, from our foundation and our board, there to celebrate as well. It's, you know, you never take anything for granted, and you never assume. It's really amazing to have that kind of acknowledgement throughout the community of the work you're doing.
But you are out there all the time beating the drum for the cause, and that's why you're here today.
We restructured the foundation quite a few years ago, and I think traditional foundations are there to raise money, and that is really their main goal, and they have other departments to do other things on behalf of the agency or the organization. For us, and maybe for me, and it could be my background in journalism and media, I really feel that the story of why we're here in the first place needs to be told, and the prevention education part around mental health is the most important narrative that we need to communicate. And so if we can do that, I feel that the more and more people know about what we do and why we're doing it, the donations will come.
You mentioned a story, and that's what I wanted to talk about next. Maddie Jackson's story that's on your website. That's a powerful, powerful 7 minutes to watch.
Maddie Jackson is really quite a champion and a hero for us. And when we first started talking, she and I, she said, you know, Pathstone saved my life. And if I can tell my story and help one person, I feel like, you know, that's a reward for me, and that's my way of thanking the organization for the help. As we got into the layers of Maddie's story, we really saw just how deep and dark it was. And all of the things that she was going through, she did feel like she was going through alone. And when she got to the point where she could reach out for help, it was basically in that moment talking about suicide to her mother, and her mother reacted and brought her to the hospital, which was the right thing to do for sure. And it was upon getting out of the hospital that, you know, she felt a little more stable, but still didn't have any tools to prevent something like this from happening again. And that's when she ended up at Pathstone. And that's really what our team does. It's about giving kids tools to be able to respond appropriately and self-soothe, self-regulate, and be able to manage through issues and problems. You know, kids aren't necessarily born with resiliency, so we're teaching them the skill set so that they are able to progress into adulthood as stronger individuals.
I think a lot of parents over the last couple of decades too haven't allowed their kids to build up that resiliency.
Perfect example, I was talking to a psychologist, and they said, if you look at any playground scenario where kids are playing and on climbers, monkey bars, etc., and as soon as they're up too high and they realize, oh, I'm stuck,
right,
and they kind of panic, parents are the first ones to kind of, you know, jump in and rescue them. Like either they pick them right off, they climb up behind them, instead of walking them through the strategy of getting out of the bind that they got themselves into. And so because those kinds of moments are teaching moments. So you can either teach or you can save.
Save them.
And if you save, they're no further ahead. They feel that whenever they get into a tough situation, someone will swoop in and save them.
What do we need to keep in mind as the holiday season approaches?
So the holidays can be a really special time for a lot of people, or it could be a very lonely time for people. And I don't mean just, you know, if you've got a lot of family and friends around and, you know, that sort of thing. Sometimes the room could be full of people and you could feel like the loneliest person. So I think, you know, we talk about checking in with people, and instead of saying, are you okay? Or how are you doing today? Because our natural tendency is to say, hey, I'm good, how are you? We don't even really hear the question. We already know what our token response is going to be. I think if you identify the behavior that you're observing, it's probably more effective in engaging conversation with someone. So, you know, I noticed you seem a little sad today or a little down today. Is there something you want to talk about, or can we chat about that?
A little more pointed.
A little more pointed. You may have a better result in, you know, breaking through. I think, you know, check-ins with kids, and I have a 16-year-old, so I'm going to preface with this is how I talk with her. And I didn't really learn that strategy until, you know, a little ways in, but I don't sit in front of her and talk to her eye to eye.
Right.
And I know people say that deep connection happens when you make eye contact and that sort of thing. I already have a deep connection with my daughter. I feel I do. So when we're having conversations, it's usually when we're driving, when we're walking, when we're in the hot tub, and we're never face to face, we're side by side.
Right.
And the conversation flows really easily and readily. She just talks. So sometimes it just depends on the scenario. So set it up where you're baking or you're doing a puzzle or a game, going for a walk, that sort of thing, where there's a bit of a busyness happening with the conversation. And I think sometimes parents will get a little bit more out of their kids. And just listen. Don't worry about, you know, chiming in or forming your opinion or giving a reaction. Just listen.
I think that can basically sum it all up right
Right.
there, those two words, just listen. Great listening to you and talking to you. Thanks for joining us today, Kim.
Always a pleasure.